Great. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and it's also nice to meet the rest of you. And yeah, those of you who have your video off right now, I appreciate that might have to happen. So we're in this very strange time of meeting on Zoom. So I want to give people permission to look away from the camera. Like, don't feel rude if you want to just look away from the camera, look out the window for a little while, give your eyes a break from the screen. Feel free to shut your camera off if that feels better to you. So don't worry about me. I'm an extreme extrovert. So I could talk into empty space forever. And if no one's even listening, it's fine. I'm happy. But you're all there. So that's great as well. So yeah, so this is the theme of this evening is inclusivity. I can't remember if Dayajoti asked me if I would do that or if that's what I offered to do. Does anyone on the call know how we arrived? Go ahead, Kalanandi.
Yeah, I'm in the inclusivity mandate in Buddhafield, and it was somebody in our group who said, "Oh, why don't we invite Singhashri and see if they can give us, do a webinar that will touch on that." So yeah. That's how it came about.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting how like you put things out into the world and then you become the person who is about that thing and who that thing is about. So I think I was inspired a few years ago by the book Radical Dharma by Angel Kyoto Williams, Lama Rod Owens, and I'm not remembering at the moment the name of the third author. Sorry, I should have grabbed my copy of it before I jumped on the call. Anyways, you can look it up. Radical Dharma is the name of the book. Talking Race, Love, and Liberation. American teachers from different traditions that were interested in the intersection of Buddhism and social justice. And I got really fired up by this book because it just felt like I was finally reading something by people who were speaking my language, probably partly because they're American, but also speaking to issues that are very, very close to my own heart and putting them in a dharmic context. So it was just incredibly refreshing. And then very soon after that, the London Buddhist Center asked me if I'd come and do something with their Transforming Self and World group. And I thought I would do something on radical inclusivity, which is a term that Lama Rod refers to in the book. And yeah, that it was quite interesting because after I gave that talk, I put it on. I think I just started a personal insight timer channel, and I put it up there. And within a very short period of time, it had already had 2,000 or so listens. It's like the track that has the most listens of anything that I've ever put up there. Most tracks have like 100, 200 listens, but this one just. And people were writing comments like, "I can't wait for the next podcast." And I just thought, "Oh my God, I didn't mean to do anything. Like I didn't mean to do that. It just kind of happened. It came out of me. It was a very authentic offering. And it just seemed to really spark something for people." So I feel like I'm in this, almost this flow of inspiration. I'm just one person sharing my story and trying to support opening conversations, particularly within Sharatna around issues of inclusivity. But yeah, I don't see myself as an expert. I see myself as a continuing to grow and develop human being. I've definitely still got a lot to learn myself around these particular issues and themes. But I come alive in the conversation. I find it some of the most meaningful moments I've had in the movement and in the order have been when these kinds of issues are being discussed and explored. Because it just feels like it gets down, in a way, it gets down to the bone of something that's so important to all of us. That has to do with belonging. Yeah, just this sort of, this deep need that we all have that's like part of being human. And that, we've been raised and lived our lives in a culture that, as an activist friend of mine in the States, it's like this refrain. Every time I hear him speak, he says over and over again, we've been, taught these lies of separation and supremacy. And then this whole culture has been built on these lies of separation and supremacy. And I think, oh, that's so brilliant because it really gets at the truth of interconnectedness and the fact that we're all, completely and totally unique as we are, beyond comparison, inferior, superior, even equal to, which is quite interesting one to unpack. So we have this deep need to belong. Sangharakshita actually has a lot to say about our how we're conditioned and how that impacts our relationship to the group. I'm not going to go into all that now, but I would really encourage any of us who are interested in his teachings around belonging to look back at those teachings. It's quite interesting what he had to say about the individual, the group, and the spiritual community. Very, very insightful observations from him. So yeah, I thought we could start with a meditation. So the blurb for this evening had to do with creating beloved community. I think it was I am because we are. So I am because we are comes from the Ubuntu tradition, which is an African tradition of community spirit and kind of recognizing that none of us exist separate from or independent from anyone else. And obviously this time of global pandemic is showing us that quite starkly. It's like it's pulled back a curtain and revealed something about this truth, that our health is dependent on one another. We're literally in each other's hands. Our well-being is in each other's hands. So I feel personally quite inspired by that. I am because we are, and just remembering. It's a very good way to cut through the ego, actually, just remembering that none of us stand alone. Or as a friend of mine said recently in a chapter meeting, we can never give back as much as we've been given. We've just been given so much. We can never give back as much, but we can try. We can try to rise to giving back as much as possible. So yeah, we are standing on lots of other people's shoulders and also reliant on each other. I think Buddhafield really, of all of the projects in the movement, probably manifests that in the most obvious way, just the way that you work together. I don't know that much about Buddhafield, but I know enough to know that you're on the cutting edge of experimenting with how to do things in a way that's that's really cooperative and building on and honoring the strengths and the beautiful gifts that each individual brings. So so I thought I'd start with a practice that has to do with inclusivity as an internal project, if using provisionally the idea of internal and external. So what we're doing here with ourselves, how we're meeting ourselves in the space of practice and all the different parts of us that show up in the space of practice, and how we relate to that also in relationship to what it is that we actually think we're doing in practice. So what is it that we think that we're trying to manifest, or what person do we imagine ourselves being once enlightened? I mean, some of us don't necessarily relate to the developmental model, but there must be something that, some intention, some deep heart wish that keeps us coming to the space of practice, whatever that looks like for you. So we've got this deep heart wish, and then we've got like all the different parts of us that show up, and some of them aren't really that aligned necessarily with that deep heart wish, or they hold questions about what's happening there. So I thought I'd just lead us in a practice where we could just sit with all of that a little bit. So find a comfortable seat. Feel free to lay down if that feels good to you. You could even like pull the blinds and turn the lights down, like anything that helps you to feel safe and relaxed. And when you're ready, when you're in your posture, feel free to just take 3 deep breaths to support the body to arrive more fully in whatever posture you've chosen. I find 3 deep breaths a very supportive practice, particularly doing at the beginning of a sit. In a way, it kind of reminds the body of what we're doing. Here we are, we're about to meditate. Here's the breath. Here's the shape of the body just now. And we'll just listen together to the sound of the bell. So I believe there's 13 or 14 of us on the call. So just for a moment, feeling into the earth beneath us, little patch of the planet that we're sat or lying on just now, and just knowing that everyone else on the webinar this evening is also being held by the same earth. So even though we're in different locations, we're still connected through the ground, through the earth. We're all aware just now of where the body is in contact with the earth. So I'll do a little bit of helping to ground us in earth and space as elements that can support presence and curiosity. And then we'll do a bit around this heart wish that I mentioned and the parts of us that might emerge in response to it. So if you'd like, if it helps to use the breath here, just breathing right down into the points of contact with the cushions, chair, or whatever you might be lying or sitting on. Noticing the direct sensations in those points of contact. As we familiarize ourselves with the feeling of the ground, also opening to the quality of stillness, this ocean of stillness that we're sat or laying on just now. You might even enjoy imagining that you've got roots growing down through the points of contact into the earth, drawing stillness up into the body like nutrients, a resource we can draw on. Breathing stillness up through those points of contact and allowing it to fill the whole of the body. And then starting to connect with the whole of the upper body, rising into space, the head reaching for the sky. If you're laying down, just opening to the whole of the front of the body. Aware of space stretching in all directions, above, even below the earth on a molecular level, full of space. And as you breathe out here, you might enjoy a sense of the body really filling the space that you're in just now. Really taking your place. Beginning to breathe spaciousness in. You could imagine all the pores and orifices of the body completely open, like a sea anemone in a warm tide pool, just reaching out and connecting with spaciousness, drawing it into the body. And for a little while, just sitting in an open, broad space of awareness, allowing sensations to come and go through all the senses. Sounds, any visual sensations. Aware of smells or taste. Any physical sensations in the body. And also whatever thoughts and emotions are here just now. Everything just allowed to come and go in open awareness. And just checking if there's any subtle way in which you're blocking out any aspect of your experience just now. Maybe there's a pain somewhere in the body or a persistent thought or a sound. Just seeing if it's possible to gently invite that in, include it in awareness, just as it is without having to do anything with it or about it. So I'm going to invite you now, if you'd like, to bring to mind your intention for practicing, your deep heart wish, perhaps to be free from suffering for yourself and others. Maybe you prefer the language of liberation, just being a bit less stressed out, whatever it is that you're longing for. You might enjoy imagining holding that heart wish in the heart center. You could even put a hand there to let the heart know that you're here with this intention, breathing into the heart. Noticing what it's like to remember. Seeing this as an act of love towards ourselves. When we place our attention on what it is that we want most. How is that? And then it may be that as we do this, other parts of ourselves are showing up as well. So, for example, you may not be in touch with your intention just now. It may not feel available to you, perhaps in ways it did in the past. Or maybe you're aware of parts of you that aren't so sure anymore that it's possible, whatever it is that you want. There's anything else showing up in the space, the invitation is to also invite those parts in, so we don't have to cut off from them or demonize them in any way. So allowing them to also be in this space with us. there's a part of you that comes in reminding you of all the ways that you don't live up to the ideal. Okay, that's fine. They can be here too. And if at any point it gets overwhelming, just remembering the open space of awareness and allowing all of that to just be held in this open space. Broad, open, curious, loving space. It could also be that other parts get stimulated by dropping into your intention, for example, gratitude or inspiration or even joy. So you could breathe that in and allow that to also be here. Sometimes these things are also hard to feel, to let ourselves really have them. So for the last few moments of this meditation, no matter what's happened, we're just going to stop efforting in any way. Maybe take a few deeper breaths, once again connecting with the earth beneath you. Opening to sensations coming and going. You could even lean back a bit if you're sitting. You might enjoy turning the hands palm up in the lap. You might even enjoy opening the eyes a bit, maintaining a soft focus. Just allowing the whole of your experience to come and go. The fullness of life flowing through you just now, however that is. And we'll listen together again to the bell. So feel free to stretch and move in any way that feels good to you. The body might be calling out for a particular movement. And yeah, before I say anything else, I would just be personally quite interested and curious, like whatever, really fresh coming out of that meditation without much preconception or preparing, just what anything at all that you noticed there in that short period of practice, that guided practice. Feel free to just unmute yourself and speak, or if you prefer to raise your hand. What did you notice?
Say something.
Go on.
I just noticed the power of being given that permission. It's happened time and again, but something just feels really significant when somebody or perception from outside says, no, just pause for a minute and have a look inside, and yeah, just something else can begin to kind of uncurl, some little tender space inside can begin to kind of uncurl. So, it's just something about that permission.
I don't know what your name is, because is it Abs?
Yeah, abs.
Oh, Abs, great.
Yeah.
So this, I love, it's so evocative how you put that, like something tender wants to uncurl. And all it took was a little permission to just like, oh, why don't you just stop and close your eyes and take a few deep breaths and go inward and see what's there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. What about others? What did you notice there? Yeah, go on, Kamalanandi.
I don't ever meditate this time of day when I'm at home. At the moment, my children are hopefully getting themselves ready for bed and putting themselves to bed, which they don't normally do. And yeah, I do that with them. And it's really interesting kind of feeling the tension between, normally that's something I'm really herding them, herding them to bed, and then going, well, I can't do that because I'm meditating. And then kind of just like letting go and going. So sort of aware of that kind of like, you need to keep an eye on things in the house and shouting out to them, obviously, because I'm on mute a few times, going, get in the bath, do this, wash your feet, whatever. And then meditating and just feeling that going, wow, this feels really very different to my normal experience of this time of day.
Yeah.
Being a single parent with two crazy children that have been on lockdown for weeks on end.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice.
Yeah, I saw you doing this, which is, I can feel that tension there. Yeah. And also just the way you were talking about it, I could hear, like you ended by saying nice. So it's like, it's not a problem. It's just what's happening. Yeah. So the parent version of you is also there, and like, why not? You're at home, your kids are there, you love them, you care for them. Thank you. Yeah, go on, Ruth.
I always feel amazed that just that really just simple thing of just relaxing, and just how that makes such a tremendous difference all on its own.
Yeah.
It's nothing complicated. It's just plain old relaxing. And a few times on Zoom, and every time I do a meditation on Zoom, and I've decided just to lie down and not be all fussy about my meditation posture and whatever, and just flop on the bed. And it just is very, very relaxing without having to bother about really relaxing, if you see what I mean. And it just makes it's just made the Zoom thing really work for me then, so that's been really nice. So
yeah I appreciate you listening deeply to that part of you that just needs to lay down. And and rather than kind of like this other part, like the manager saying you must relax now, which can create a lot of tension.
Yes, absolutely. What's happened? I've gone.
So we just seem to have lost Singhashri temporarily. I'm sure that she will be returning to us. She'll probably be redialing in. So I just think, go ahead, Chris. You were going to say something.
Yeah.
Just go ahead. She'll join us.
Yeah, well, I think for me, similar to Ab's there about permission, something I haven't done for quite a while is sort of asking what else there is in my experience, and sort of just having that openness to allow other parts of yourself in. I suppose generally with meditation, I can slip into just kind of being quite mechanical with it, doing the metta, doing the mindfulness, or whatever it is. And it's just nice to, approach it in a way that I haven't done for a while, and just allowing that, those other voices just to be there. Very, very relaxing.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I was just noticing how got quite a sort of strong emotional experience going on around certain things at the moment, and it's nice in the meditation just to say, okay, yeah, it's there, and it was like it just sort of crackled away under its own energy, just as a kind of thing in the picture, but not everything. Yeah, I found that quite. Yeah, it felt somehow more spacious, or like a different relationship with this particular thing.
Thank you. I think it's interesting how when we're led through meditation, there's a part of the automatic pilot that kind of can't quite do its normal thing, which keeps us in our usual state of tension. So when we're sort of, gives, somehow by having something coming in from the outside, it gives us more space to really let go in ways that left to our own devices we often don't. Curious. Mm. Have we got any news? Any Lotus? Are you texting Singhashri or seeing what's happening? Ah, yay! She's back.
Now using my data. Is that hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We had a couple more people sharing their experience.
Okay. Yeah, great. Go on.
Anyone else?
Okay. So yeah, I want to appreciate the folks who did speak and share. So thank you, Abs, Kalanandi, and Ruth, and whoever else shared while I was frantically trying to figure out what had happened to my connection. So yeah, I thought I would just say a few things about inclusivity as just as an exploration, I guess, that I've been, as I said in the beginning, involved in for quite a long time now. I would say probably since my early years. So I remember being quite young. I was raised by Chilean immigrants in Boston. And from a very early age, it was made very clear to me that we were different. Not in any particularly like hostile ways, but just in subtle ways. Like I remember my 5th grade teacher not being able to say my name. And so she just told me she was going to shorten it and call me the shortened version. You know, just little things like that. I think a friend of mine refers to it as a slow drip drip. Or you just get this kind of message that you don't quite belong. So for a long time, particularly when I started practicing, I noticed that I had this kind of innate, well, what felt innate, quite deeply held view that I didn't, like the world wasn't made for me. Like it was made for all those other people out there, but it wasn't for me somehow. And that I was going to have to kind of make my own way, make it work for me. And then I'm so grateful actually to being queer, because the queer community is one place where I showed up in all of my woundedness and also all of my like quirkiness, and was just very, like completely accepted with open arms. So as as a young lesbian, also feeling quite rejected by my family and by my community, being raised Catholic, lots of messages about, it's a sin to be gay. And I remember my mom telling me that it was an interesting workaround, actually. She said that God had created gay people, so there would always be enough of us to go into the priesthood and the nunnery, which I thought was like preposterous. Like, why wouldn't he just not give you sexuality then? Like, why would he give you a sexuality that you can't act out? Doesn't make any sense. So yeah, and I am so grateful to Viveka. Viveka is a very good friend of mine and also my preceptor. And very early on in my practice, she was quite strong with me, really encouraging me. So my deep heart wish when I first came along was to love myself and others more deeply, and to make it so that others could also love me, like to not be so defended and angry. Basically, I was a very angry person, a young person. And I remember going to her. It might have even been the very first time she taught me how to do the metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. I remember going to her and saying, I can't do the first stage of the Metabodhana. I just can't do it. I just try and do it. And all I feel is numb. You know, I don't feel anything towards myself. I don't have any, there's nothing there. It's just not happening for me. And I'm so grateful to her because she didn't collude with me. So there was part of me that wanted her to go, oh, there, it's okay. Like, poor you, you can't love yourself. You must have had a terrible childhood, you know, all of that. And instead, she just looked at me. She kind of leaned in and she just looked at me, and it felt like she was just looking like straight into me in a particular, like just a very intimate gaze. And she just said, wow, that's really interesting. Can you, she didn't say this, but what I kind of gleaned from it upon reflection was, can you get interested in the fact that you try and love, you know, you try and have love for yourself and nothing happens? Like that could just be a very interesting area of exploration. And so, of course, I did get interested in it, and that led to many further interesting experiences and reflections, really needing to become radically honest with myself about what was going on there, which was a mixture of all sorts of things. But just the fact that, you know, rather than creating a self out of that and using it to reinforce some story that I wasn't good enough or I was wretched or whatever, it's like, actually, I could just include that part of me that doesn't know how to love herself and just start loving her. So yeah, so this value, principle, practice of inclusivity being something that that I'm doing in my own practice as a way to kind of flex a muscle of then how to be able to do that out in the world. So one of the things I've learned over time is that the more open and spacious I can be towards myself and my own experience and all these different parts of me popping up, as I try and reach for the ideal, whatever that ideal might be, the more I can do that with other people, the more I can be that open and free in my relationships with others. What would it be like to just be able to completely let people be exactly and totally how they are, show up as they are, manifest as they are, act out as they do? And I'm not saying that, so just as a really important what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a qualifier, but an important point to make is I'm not saying that we don't hold ourselves and others accountable. So when I say showing, you know, including and allowing us to show up as we are, obviously, if people are causing harm or acting out of delusion or ignorance, we do need to, like, accountability is critical. But how can we do that from a place of love, moving towards reparation and reconciliation, rather than a place of anger or hatred that can only lead to more separation and frustration and hurt? So this was the main message of Martin Luther King Jr., who led the American Civil Rights Movement, or was one of the leaders of the American Civil Rights Movement. You know, he talked about beloved community and how only through nonviolent action, as a means to an end, the end being reparation and reconciliation, could we move forward as a society, and that violence was not going to get us there. It might get you small gains on the way, but it would not lead to the kind of beloved community that he imagined, the beautiful dream that he spoke of so eloquently. So for me, a big question is, you know, like, how can I do that for myself? And then also, how can I, in any moment of my life, just try and practice this kind of radical love, radical inclusivity, radical honesty, which is it's a challenge. It's a tall ask. I don't always get it right. I don't always have the energy. But just by putting that out there as an intention, it supports me to move towards it. Yeah. So it's like kind of like a beacon that just keeps me going in that direction. I might waver. It's not necessarily a straight line, well, I actually wouldn't want it to be a straight line. That would just be really boring. So yeah, just making my way towards that. And one thing that I've been practicing is like seeing how in every moment is an opportunity to just be a little bit more soft with myself and others, just a little bit more open, a little bit more interested, curious, allowing, accepting. Yeah, so slowly, I think actually what Ruth was saying right before we got cut off there reminded me of something that I appreciate, that Vidyamala, one of my friends and it's someone I worked with quite closely for many years, used to say about the breathworks program that she developed, which is mindfulness for pain and illness. She said, oh, we're always kind of coming in through the back door, which I love. So it's like, rather than kind of thinking, oh, I have to be more soft and inclusive, or like with Ruth, like I have to be relaxed. It's like, no, actually, what if we just allowed, well, it's like that beautiful line from that Mary Oliver poem, you know, allow the soft body of the animal of your body to love what it loves. Like, can we allow ourselves to soften enough to kind of, yeah, it's almost like we relax our way into awakening. It's these walls of separation and defendedness and whatever else we might be working with based on our own conditioning that get in the way of that. But underneath it all, there's this, or going back to what Abs was saying, you know, this tender thing that just wants to uncurl. It's what it wants to do. It's its natural movement. It's its innate nature. So it wants to open. And then, you know, and then there's all the ways that we're conditioned. And we are conditioned in a world that's based on, speaking as American, you know, my entire, my entire sort of worldview, in one sense, like I'm thinking about the education system I was brought up in. Like, I was raised in Boston, which is like one of the first places that the Pilgrims arrived. And we were taught that Thanksgiving was this like wonderful celebration of love between the Indians and the settlers. And I actually remember being like 10 years old and thinking that there was like smelling a fish, if that's the right saying, like something wasn't right. I thought that just doesn't sound right. Like if we got along so well with these people, where are they now? Like, why don't I see Native Americans around? Like, wouldn't they be everywhere if it had all gone well and swimmingly? So yeah, so I just say all that to say, you know, it's like it's seeped through everything, this world that we live in, and that what it was built on and why. And it's also in us, you know, it's in our consciousness. So I see more and more these days Dharma practice as the work of undoing those collective and ancestral wounds that we all carry. So I'm going to stop there. I'm aware of the time, so a little while. Controls for that. Groups of 3 or 4 would be good, just to basically anything that the meditation or anything I just said there has evoked for you, anything that's been awakened or stimulated, just to have a chance to share that. And then we'll come back at the end and hear from the groups. And maybe while you're all in breakout groups, I'll try and reconnect to the internet.
Okay, just bear with us a few minutes. We're just doing a little bit though.
Okay, thank you.
You okay, Amaragita?
I'm just trying to work out how to put you as host now.
So if you hover over my screen, so you stop the recording.
Ah, okay.
And then